people who live with deafness. So I went to go and study sign language because I realized that people who live with deafness are very much discriminated against because of the disability, and they don't have access to resources. So even things like being sexually violated, all sorts of types of abuse happens to them because they can't communicate. For me, whenever I think about mental illness and I talk to everyday life people, I say things like, let's say you're struggling with sadness for a long period of time. Then you decide, the thing that makes me okay is a bev. So I drink from time to time. It makes me okay. And then you find that you're relying on that. There's an underlying issue, and you're now coping with something that is destructive. So you know how we see things like, you have that friend or that cousin or that brother, whoever, who on Mondays they don't go to work because they have a hangover and whatnot. That substance you're using is prohibiting you from functioning in your occupational spaces. You're not going to work on Monday because you have a hangover or because the weekend was too good or whatever, right? So we think about mental illness like it's this far thing where we see dysfunction, but dysfunction is progressive. It's not okay. It's not okay. No, it's not okay. We must end relationships. So you know what's something that's very interesting about us as adults? We've learned how to be nice to each other. We've learned how to be kind. We've even been taught how to conduct ourselves in relationships. But no one teaches us how to end relationships.
Yeah, no.
We fight and then it's it, or you take your things, you put them in a refuse bag and you go. But no one says, how do you end a relationship in a healthy way? How do you sit down? So we have it in our cultures, like let's say if somebody is married and then
Everybody, welcome to Motivation Corner, the biggest podcast in the world. And my name is Bulukeng, your favorite content creator and host. So thank you so much. If you're here for the first time, worry not, we've got you covered. You can go through the old videos and learn as much. But since you are here today, this is a rhema, like how Christians say it's a rhema way. This is what was meant for you today. So thank you for clicking, and do stay tuned and listen to this beautiful conversation that we're going to be having. If you are returning, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your people, man, with your friends, with your family, with whoever, your colleagues, and let's be great and let's learn as much as we can. This learning thing doesn't end. It's always all the time we have to learn. So thank you so much for being here. So today, guys, I was like, let me get someone who's going to help us understand our mental health very, very well and stop saying things. Sometimes we say things out of context. We don't even know what we're saying. So today I was like, let's get things right and be able to help our loved ones. And I'd like to welcome my guest, who is gonna introduce herself and tell us more about herself. Thank you so much for coming. Please greet my people and briefly describe yourself and who you are and where you come from. Yeah.
okay, thank you so much. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. My name is Amina Moikambo. Hello, 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 hello. And I'm a psychologist. I'm a psychologist based here in South Africa, and I'm very passionate about mental health. And one of the reasons why I was really happy to be able to honor this invite was because there's so many misunderstandings about mental health and mental illness. There's so many things that we say about mental health and mental illness that are totally wrong, that contributes towards the stigma and the discrimination that happens. And that's part of the reason why we do have so many struggles in society. So I'm really happy to be here and be part of this conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
No, thank you so much, Amina. You're most welcome, and we really appreciate you, like out of your schedule, to squeeze us in. Thank you so much. So you saying you are a psychologist, studying psychology.
Yes.
So what do you like when you get to university? What did you choose? You chose psychology.
So that's a funny story, and I think many psychologists will have the same kind of experience. So I went in to study a bachelor's of psychology, and I wanted to specialize in trauma counseling. So I registered at a university and I started the degree, and then I had some issues with the university. So it was a 4-year degree I was supposed to finish, and what I then did is I adjusted my degree to a Bachelor of Arts in political science and psychology because I wanted to move out of the university. So because of that, then it was an academic degree. So I went and I finished my Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Political Science. And then I moved to another university. I moved to Wits University, and that's where I did my honors in psychology. And then after that, so that was also another academic degree, not a professional degree. There's a difference between the two. So after I finished my honors degree, I then applied to do a master's degree in psychology. So in order to become a psychologist here in South Africa, you need to have a master's degree. You need to complete a master's degree in psychology. So then that's when I did my master's in psychology and I completed that. And I'm currently busy with my PhD in psychology. But in order to be a psychologist, you have to have a master's degree in one of the different types of psychology, the different ranges of psychology. Yeah.
Okay, so what interested you in pursuing this? Why did you have an interest in pursuing psychology?
I think I've always been orientated towards people and working with people and supporting people. So I was always just kind of, here and there, doing this and that, along the way. My brain is actually very much numerically based, very much maths based. So I wasn't really going to go into psychology initially. Initially, I was going to go into engineering. That's what I wanted to do. And then I think psychology found me. It made sense where I was at that particular time in my life and what I was doing, what I felt was like my passion. And psychology made sense. So that's what I did. And I never looked back.
What made sense? You just said and it made sense. Like what like made you to be like this is what I'm meant to do? Like what?
When you work with people and you see people struggling and you see the difficulties, so some of the things we call societal ills or social ills, and the struggles people have within themselves, with their families, in relationships, being able to progress in life. We see, we have issues of gender-based violence. I remember in one particular time in my life, I was very much interested in people who live with deafness. So I went to go and study sign language because I realized that people who live with deafness are very much discriminated against because of the disability, and they don't have access to resources. So even things like being sexually violated, all sorts of types of abuse happens to them because they can't communicate. Yeah. So they're taken advantage of. And I mean, for me at that time, I was like, okay, let me see how I can integrate into the community and provide some sort of support. So I went and I learned sign language. And then I think engaging a little bit more, I realized that, it's not just about being able to reach people. It's about people who live with deafness. So I went to go and study sign language because I realized that people who live with deafness are very much discriminated against because of the disability, and they don't have access to resources. So even things like being sexually violated, all sorts of types of abuse happens to them because they can't communicate. Yeah. Let me go and understand what makes people the way that they are. What makes people think the way they think, feel the way they think, respond to situations the way they do. So it was all of that that then made me say, let me go and find the science behind people. And then that's what I went to study. And the rest is history.
Oh, that's how you got into the psychology part.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, how long have you been working as a psychologist?
So altogether, let me say it like this: the commitment to this field, it's now been about, officially, formally, it's now been about 11 years. So I finally finished and I registered as a independent psychologist, because there's a whole process where you have to be supervised and you go and do your internships and everything. So I finally registered, I think it was in 2020. Yeah, so independently working, practicing, that's been about 4 years now. 5 years, yeah.
All right. So which patients do you prefer to work with? Because I didn't know that there's trauma, what, depression side, there's all these things. So which one do you prefer, maybe? For
Prefer is a strong word.
Oh, okay.
No, I understand your question. I understand your question completely. So, one of the difficulties about understanding psychology, especially in, let me say, in our African context, is that people come from somewhere. You're born somewhere, and then you grow, you develop, and there's so many contributors that make you the person who you are at any given point in time. So because of that, one of the things that I believe is that everybody should have access to mental health care. There isn't a particular type of mental health challenge that I prefer to work with. I've worked predominantly with trauma. So even understanding mental illness from a context of trauma, understanding mental health from a context of trauma. But I think just generally where I am at now, and especially because resources are very limited, it's hard to then turn away people and then say, no, I can't, this is not my field of interest. So there are certain types of mental illnesses, for example, that I haven't worked with extensively. So I always refer. So I always know like what is within my skill set, what do I believe I can do and treat well. And if I know that there's other professionals that can do that better, then that's when I refer. So just generally because there aren't that many psychologists in the country. Yes, there are not that many. Universities train plus minus 12. So you'll have clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, educational psychologists, research, industrial. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting someone, I think. But each university will train 12 of each. So each year, a university is pushing out maybe about between 50 and 60 psychologists. If you think about the population of this country, it's not that many. So there are not that many psychologists in this country. Psychology is very under-resourced. So and the thing is, it's like as long as there's people, there's issues and there's things that people need to deal with. Yeah. So I mean it is a field where there is a lot of work. And I think because we're not so much aware of mental health difficulties, people are just kind of going through life.
Yeah.
Like just kind of going. And you don't realize that things are not okay until you hit like a deadlock. That's when you start to see that, this person, man, is not okay. Maybe they haven't been okay for 5 years prior to that. And they've been learning how to cope with things sometimes that are not healthy for them, which is why we have a lot of our struggles in society, violence, substance abuse, that kind of stuff, the dissolution of families, people are not able to retain relationships, is because people are not capacitated enough to be able to have a certain quality of life. Yeah.
So, what is mental illness and how does one achieve a great mental health?
Okay.
Yeah, because most of the time we also joke like, I'm traumatized, guys, I'm traumatized. And so when do you know that now I'm mentally ill? And okay, just explain what is mental illness so that when people don't understand, maybe that's why you don't even get help.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand.
Yeah.
Mentally ill.
So the thing about mental health and mental illness, it's like it's on a spectrum, right? So mental illness is a time when we can say that this person has a barrier to their mental health and it impacts on their ability to function. So how you socialize, how you function at work, you can't do that as well as you should. If the mental health difficulty or the challenge now prohibits you from being able to function in everyday life, we then start to classify it as a mental illness, right? So let me give an example because we always didn't think about mental illness as a person who, some of the more intense, more severe types of psychosis, the schizophrenias, that's where we then classify mental illness. But no, for me, whenever I think about mental illness and I talk to everyday life people, I say things like, let's say you're struggling with sadness for a long period of time. Then you decide, the thing that makes me okay is a bev. So I drink from time to time. It makes me okay. And then you find that you're relying on that. There's an underlying issue and you're now coping with something that is destructive. So you know how we see things like, you have that friend or that cousin or that brother, whoever, who on Mondays, they don't go to work because they have a hangover and whatnot. That substance you're using is prohibiting you from functioning in your occupational spaces. You're not going to work on Monday because you have a hangover or because the weekend was too good or whatever, right? So we think about mental illness like it's this far thing where we see dysfunction, but dysfunction is progressive. We start to see it in things like that, where a person is not able to just do things that you're supposed to be able to do. And the reason why there's a barrier is because of a mental health difficulty or mental health condition. Similarly, another example is, let's say if somebody is in a car accident, and it's very traumatic naturally, right? Because something that is traumatic is something that you've experienced or you've seen that's kind of shattered your sense of safety and stability, right? Yeah. So let's say a car accident, you're in a car accident, it's traumatic, it's very tragic, and after that you can't get inside a car. The trauma is around the accident, but now if you're not able to get inside a car, that's what's starting to classify as a mental illness. So it's like a phobia. So now you're not able to get inside the car for a prolonged, okay, maybe in the first couple of weeks, sure, there's that sense of you don't feel safe and you feel like that discomfort. What's
maybe because after the first few days, maybe we still have
that is normal. That is normal because it's like you see this bottle here, right? Okay, so this is sparkling water. So you see this is after the accident, and then it settles. But if you're still seeing bubbles immediately afterwards, it's not like there's something wrong with the water, you know? So the same way with us as well. After something traumatic has happened, you should feel shaken. It's normal. But then it should settle. And it settles if you have identified that there's an issue, you've gone to seek a little bit of help, or you've reached out to somebody, you've let them know that, I'm not okay. When you don't settle, that's when we can say it's becoming a little bit difficult. I don't like to use the word abnormal because it's a little bit controversial. But that's when we start to say, okay, what is it that's preventing you from getting into the car? Now we see the accident, ne? And we've seen how we've tried to process the accident. But now that we've tried to process the accident, you still can't get into the car. What is happening there?
No, the same with listen, there are people who have sought with their whole life now that I'm never going to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because 2 or 3 relationships again, they hurt me. I can't, I don't have any more heart to move on.
Yeah. Now.
So yeah. It's the same thing.
Okay, I'm gonna answer this like this, right? It is because so part of mental health, let me use a definition. So part of mental health is someone's ability to discover themselves, to realize their potential, to be able to make healthy decisions, to be able to function in life, to be able to progress. So when you're talking about mental health, it's your ability to do everyday life thing. Part of it is to be able to have relationships, healthy relationships, that kind of thing, right? So when you get into a relationship with somebody who's not good for you, sometimes people are able to see that, this one is not good for me. I'm exiting this relationship. That's healthy. So ending relationships is actually healthy. Progressing in a relationship that is dysfunctional is not healthy. So you find that the people who are like, I'm never getting into a relationship again, it's because you've been in relationships that progressed in an unhealthy way. So they impacted on you negatively, emotionally, psychologically, and it's now destabilized you. So it's traumatic in the sense that you went into the relationship looking for companionship, safety, someone to share life with, to have good times and everything, and it didn't work out like that, you know? So now you have this experience that is contrary to what you wanted in the beginning, and then you don't go back. I tell people, you like to say things like, yeah, you guys want to go and see psychologists, you think it's fancy. No, you need to process a breakup. You need to process, like, what went wrong? Am I okay after all of this? What did it feel for me that somebody who I looked to broke my heart, did this, or I found myself becoming this person, this relationship? You need to be able to process these things. And when people don't, they have breakups that are like losses. So it's like a grief almost. Then you jump into another relationship, and it doesn't work out. And then your system is so destabilized. You don't know where to put your emotions together. Some people grieve relationships. They don't know that they're grieving, so they feel that heartache, like that sadness. And you're like, hi, you're still thinking about that person.
Yeah, they'll tell you why when you are breaking up with this one, you should be in a 2 weeks relationship already. You know that trend on TikTok that while this one ends, you should be like the other relationship should be 2 weeks now.
You're heating the oven. Preheat. No.
Really?
No.
And people have normalized it. Hey, that. Like when you see it, is it not also a defense mechanism where people like you can see this relationship is not going anywhere, and then instead of getting out, you like let me start another one. So once it plaster it with the
Wow.
other one. Yeah.
No, that's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. No, it's not okay. We must end relationships. So you know what's something that's very interesting about us as adults? We've learned how to be nice to each other. We've learned how to be kind. We've even been taught how to conduct ourselves in relationships. But no one teaches us how to end relationships.
Yeah, no.
We fight and then it's it. Or you take your things, you put them in a refuse bag and you go. But no one says, how do you end a relationship in a healthy way? How do you sit down? So we have it in our cultures, you know, like let's say if somebody is married and then you call the families together and you discuss and then you part ways amicably. But before that, and that takes intervention. Before that, people don't know. You just end a relationship here. You're ending this one. You're preheating this one. You know that's not okay. We need to learn how to end relationships. Like check ourselves. Like how am I doing? How am I doing post this relationship? How am I? How do I feel about that this relationship ended? What went wrong? Like debrief yourself. You know what went wrong? What went right? What do I want to take into my next relationship? While you're leaving this one and jumping into the next one, you don't even know what you're taking, but you want to be happy in the next one. And part of the reasons why we then don't see that we jump into a relationship with the same person we left is because we're not even, there's just like, we're going from one to the other. You're not even able to then see that, oh, the stuff that I didn't like about this person, I'm now seeing it here because you're interested in just getting to the next relationship. So no, it's not healthy. Let's not do it. Let's debrief after a relationship. It's not a job. You must go your CV must have. No, it's not a job. It's not a job. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So also whilst they talk about relationship, let's say you are in this relationship, you love this person, they hate you. And you still feel love for this person and you find it hard to leave them. And the person is not changing. Let's say you have made them aware they're not changing and you're like, okay, and then you know as black people, especially with cheating, you'll be told that no, when a men do cheat, where are you gonna find the one that doesn't cheat? So you just have to stay with this one and eventually you guys are gonna be fine. But no one talks about the trust, the pain that you feel, and you having to work hard for yourself to trust this person again. And sometimes they also not making space for you or safe space for you to heal.
Yeah.
They want you to pick up from where you guys, after you talked about the cheating, you are expected now to be fine. So what do we say about that? Especially now this person is like a serial cheat. What do you do?
You know, the way that we have normalized infidelity in society is a very big problem. Because one of the big things you said just now is trust. How do you trust someone who you can't trust? Because if you're in a relationship with someone, there must be trust. But if you don't trust them, you're now living in this relationship with distrust. That's not nice. You know, let's just take it to something like a job, right? You get into a job, the reason why they hire you is because you have the skills. Now you get there and you discover, I don't actually have the skills for this. Every day you're there on Google and Chat GPT trying to figure out how to do the next thing. It's not settling. So you're in this relationship with this organization and you don't know what they're going to throw at you. Someone is going to throw a question at you and you'll be like, give me a moment, because you must figure it out. That kind of anxiety is not okay.
Yeah.
So when people are in relationships with people who they don't trust, it is not okay. So we say things like, yeah, all men cheat, and then what the solution is that then just stay there. Not how do we fix people who say they want to be in monogamous relationships, but then they don't. You know, that is the actual problem. So I mean, just generally, this idea that people should begazelle or figure it out, that thing is so toxic. It is so unhealthy. It's part of the reasons why, you know, when we think about mental health challenges, those are amongst the reasons why people have mental health challenges. Because the idea is that you have to deny what you feel. What I feel is that I shouldn't be cheated on. What I feel is that I want a partner who's like this and like this and like this, who knows how to care for me, who knows how to communicate well with me, who I can sleep and I'm not worried that they're somewhere on the streets, you know. That sense of peace is being taken away and we've normalized that, and that's not okay.
We're all going around broken inside and we're not doing anything.
And doing nothing about it.
Yeah. Okay, now we've handled that. So, lastly, is it fine fine for people to go for like for therapy after they've broken up with people sometimes. Because I'm trying to establish, when do you know that now I must go for counseling? When do you know that? Because I don't want to go I don't want to go for therapy when now it's very hard. Now I really need medication instead of just talking it out.
Yeah.
When does one realize that now I need counseling?
You know, the tricky thing about how to answer that question is it's, mental health care and wellness, it's a lifestyle thing, So it's not like a response like, oh, okay, I have this situation, let me go and seek support. When we learn how to manage our mental health, just generally, it's easy to pick up that I'm not okay. So it's just like, we eat every day. And then let's say you eat something and your stomach doesn't feel okay. You don't need to go to a gastro specialist to tell you that, there's something wrong with your stomach. You just can tell, my stomach is not okay. And there's so many resources you go to settle your stomach. You can get you can get whatever it is, right? Because it's lifestyle. We know our physical bodies. Because we don't know our mental health, we don't understand ourselves, we don't know our psyches. It's then hard to discover, when do I need to go and seek professional help? So that's the one thing. But just generally, when you find that you're in a situation and you're not feeling well, you're sad most of the time, you're uncomfortable some of the time, you're anxious, in a specific situation, you're in a relationship, the relationship has ended, and you feel so broken, so sad, so much like, I don't know how I'm going to shake this feeling. It's natural if a relationship ends that you feel a sense of loss. It's natural. You're with the person for a particular time. You hoped you were going to be 95 together on a rocking chair on the patio. You were hoping for those things. It's not there. You're experiencing loss. It's normal. But once it starts impacting on other things, so people then start to cope with different things. Once it starts impacting on how you function, whether you can build a next relationship, whether you're getting out of bed, how you see yourself, like then you see yourself as the only reason why the relationship ended, and you're not doing anything to kind of like attend to those things you've identified, then you do need professional help. But I really want to say this, we don't all need to go to a psychologist all the time. We have our systems in our lives. Like if you have a friend and you talk to your friend, you're like, friend, my relationship ended, I'm really struggling, you can see that the person already knows they're struggling. So you're going towards healthy ways of coping. You're going towards family, you're going towards comfort, you're going towards support, you're going towards people who you trust, who you feel safe with. That's what healing looks like. When you have to now come to us is when maybe you don't have those support systems, or the support systems, the natural way to get past a breakup is not working, then we would say that you need to come and see someone, because it's not just the relationship that ended that's a problem. Something underlying that, or there's something that has been triggered now and you're not able to cope with that particular thing. Yeah.
Guys, let's do the right thing and regulate ourselves.
Yes.
Like check on ourselves and have those relationships. And if you see that you no longer functioning as you used to, and also for us as, let's say I'm your friend or family member, now I can see that you're starting to be more reserved. You are now want your alone time.
Yes.
And as we know, that's also a sign that we need to reach out. And you know what? I mean, sometimes people like they don't want to talk.
Yeah.
And when you tell them go for counseling, they don't. What do you do in those situations? How do you advise them? How do you be there for them so that maybe they can trust you and listen to you? Because we do have family members who they're forever quiet. You can see this person is struggling. When you ask, no, I'm okay. I just prefer to be alone. Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is sometimes there are people who they withdraw a bit when, like a turtle, it has its shell and its head pokes out, and then when it feels like I'm not safe, it withdraws, it goes back into its shell. So there's some people who feel safer, not isolating, but like introverts, so like when you're on your own. There are people who do, but I hear what you're saying. It's a distinct thing. It's like, I can see you're not okay.
Yeah,
I can see.
Lost our father, and ever since you've never been yourself.
That thing that you can see that the person has shifted from how they were before. That is something where you try to encourage the person to get help. Like, okay, you might not feel comfortable talking to me. Can you please talk to somebody else? What I found is people talk. And I don't know, but people talk, they tell me things. Maybe it's because it's my profession, but people, so you see, that's the thing. It's like people want to engage the way they need to engage. Sometimes person might not have the words to explain, especially if it's like a trauma or a loss and it's very painful. They don't have the words. Sometimes just kind of being there, just being in that space a little bit here and there and just saying, hey, I just want to check in on you. Or are you okay if I just sit here with you for a while? I won't bother you. It starts to communicate that we can do this in silence, but you're building a connection. The thing is, when somebody has experienced something that's really destabilized them, you'll find that they isolate. So even you see the person themselves, but they're so deep within themselves. So sometimes just being present, because the thing is, when someone is like, I want to be alone, you leave them, ne? You try here and there, then you leave them. And those are the times where you don't do it in an invasive way, but you show up, you check in, you send that message, how are you doing? Just checking in. You bring them something nice. You go and you sit next to them. You don't have to talk. You can just be there in the silence. And if that's what they need at that time, then they start to connect with you. And when they connect with you, then they're able to then start to bring a little bit. But you say things like, what, I'm concerned about you, but I know you're not ready to talk, or you feel like you're okay. It's fine. When I'm on the outside, I can see you, and I do think something is wrong, but I'm here for you anytime you need to talk. But you just edge your way in, like in a way that's not too invasive. I found that does help quite a bit. Yeah.
Because obviously, if it's your sister or your brother, it's like subjective to you as a sister. Like, you really want to help them, and it's very hard if they don't respond.
Yeah.
And you feel like they're rejecting your help.
There we go. So you see, that thing is like, and it's natural, but it's like in that time, it's actually not about you. It's about them. But you're like, talk to me, I love you, right? Right? It's that patience. It's about saying, okay, fine, they're not talking. I will just sit here in the silence. I will connect. You're gonna know I'm here, whether we talk about it or not. So that's very true. It can be very hard to just kind of watch somebody who you love. It's kind of like isolating, but you find your way.
Yeah, I was once, not once, twice, been in psychiatric hospital, and I've seen how people like react to that. It's like, you are mad. Why would you go there? I see the ignorance maybe out of people, that they think when you go there you are really really mad. But how do we make people to understand? Because there are those people that they will be required to go to a psychiatric hospital where they will be taken care of with the help of others and all the group counseling that you need to do. But people have that stigma that, hey, you're going there, we're Sanya or something. How do we sensitize the community and people around us, even the people who need it, so that they don't frown upon it? That, oh, I'm sick, then I need to go where I'm going to be taken care of. Like, yeah.
I think one of the saddest things about psychiatry is that when somebody is seeking psychiatric treatment, it's like, you're the problem. But you're the one getting the treatment. It's the ones who are not getting the psychiatric treatment that were like, actually, you should be getting the treatment, So, and I think that's very unfortunate, because anytime, and one of the things, the way we use our words, like, you're mad, you're crazy, yahlanya. One, what is the word for mental illness? Like ngeSulu or ngeSwati. What is it? When someone is not okay, they'll be like, hey, ngathi uyahlanya. But can you see that's very derogatory?
Diagnose you bipolar.
So the way we use our language around mental health and mental illness is already problematic. We need to stop doing things like that. We need to stop saying things like, oh, you're so schizo, or that's so OCD, or hey, that's not bipolar, like your emotions are all over the place. Even saying things like, yeah, Amina's so moody. It's so problematic, because if I'm moody, Essentially what you're saying is that my mood shifts a lot. My mood fluctuates. Who chooses? Who? Show me the one person who chooses to be happy and sad at the same time. Show me one person who chooses, who's like, I'd love to be angry and then be happy now. Look, in my years, I have not met that person who's choosing to be destabilized. So we really need to be able to open ourselves up to understand that mental health challenges are similar to physical challenges. We don't judge people when they go for chemo. We don't judge people when they need to go for dialysis. So why are we judging people when they're having a mental illness, or they're living with a mental illness, or they need to be admitted? That person is going to get help. They've identified that there's an issue, or someone has had to identify on their part that there's an issue and they need admission, and they're getting treatment, and they will be discharged. And they're much more empowered and capacitated to be able to deal with the mental health challenge or the mental illness. I think our lack of empathy, because we just assume that we should all be fine.
Yeah.
We just assume, and then it's almost like if you have a mental illness, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Who is going to look for mental illnesses, really?
When everything is going well, like I have a job, I have kids, I have a partner, a loving partner, but you find yourself still going through that, and people are like, we are there for nothing.
It's the same thing as saying to somebody who eats healthy, who exercises or whatever, and then develops cancer, like, what was your problem? It happens, but I think it's because we don't know enough. We don't speak about mental health and mental illness enough, so people don't know. And then there's a lot of like stigma around it. And there's somebody who I know who's living with lupus, and she always used to say things like, people would say she's lazy, like, yeah, vilapa, that kind of thing. But if you know what lupus is like, it's an autoimmune disease, and your body, sometimes your joints get inflamed, you feel fatigued all the time, so you're not out there doing, like now it's really cold today. I'm sure wherever she is, she's inside a bed with blankets and the heat and whatever, because your nervous system reacts. So when we see you, we're like, you're still in bed. Yes, my body's fatigued. It's tired. I feel tired. And then you'll say that the person is lazy. They're not lazy. Their body is fatigued. Their body is reacting not the same way your body is reacting. So I think with mental illness and mental health, we should also be able to say, just because Mine, I was able to deal with this, why should I feel that you should be able to deal with it? I should allow you to have the space to deal with your challenges the way you do. I can't be like, oh yeah, but now it happened to me and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Kudos to you. You'll do a podcast for us. You'll do a TED talk. Let the ones who have struggled also have a voice. That I am struggling with this. It's very difficult. We don't do that enough. And that's why when somebody lives with a mental illness, we just want to like hide it underground. Somebody must take pills. It's very similar to what we've done with HIV and AIDS. It's like there's this thing that we must hide. It's like this embarrassment. No. Living with a mental illness is living with a mental illness, and we should be able to be okay and embraced in society without difficulties and be supported, for example, when those difficulties might impact negatively on ourselves and on other people as well.
Yeah, I think we can finish the whole day, because that is also myself. It's a topic very close to my heart, because I've come to realize that we all, like most of the time, most of us are not okay, and we just found the coping mechanism.
Yes.
But it's very unfair of others that they'll say how they mock mental health. Like they'll be like, now they're gonna tell me to go see a psychologist, and the psychologist is gonna tell me you need to forgive yourself.
Can people please leave us alone also with the memes? Leave us alone with the memes.
So yeah, no, this is just an awareness that mental illness is like any other sickness. It needs to be treated. If it's severe, you will be admitted. Yes. There's nothing bad there. Yes. So most of the people there at the hospital where I was admitted, they came because they had tried to commit suicide.
Yeah.
So how can you tell this person is suicidal, and how to help them from even doing it, harming themselves?
Suicide is such it's a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. I think amongst the things people don't know is that it's not only people living with depression that attempt suicide or complete suicide. There are many, how can I summarize it? There are many reasons that a person can reach to a place where they're like, I'm going to end my life. Sometimes it's sadness. Sometimes it's just kind of feeling like this world thing is too tough for me, you know? And sometimes there's, in those situations, sometimes there's signs. You can see a person like slowing down, not engaging enough, not able to do what they need to do. So it's not like what's sensationalized, that person with depression then overeats or undereats, doesn't get out of bed or whatever. It's not that sensationalized thing. It's about everyday life thing. You know the friends who you're like, hey, this one is always negative. How we understand that from a psychological perspective is that this person has a pessimistic outlook on life. This person doesn't have as much hope. Like, they're not seeing things as positive. They're not seeing things as, I can achieve this, right? Those are some of the little everyday life signs that we see that the person is not coping here where they are, right? So by the time somebody's attempting suicide, if in some situations you'll find that they've been struggling with something and they've lost hope, and the world feels unsafe and it feels scary, and it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do tomorrow, so let me just end my life now. Let me just end it. Some people are like, this is too difficult and I just want to escape, right? And the unfortunate thing about it is, because where they are, it's like the world has been so shadowed by, overwhelmed by what is happening. They're not able to then see that, after this, if I end my life here, grand, I don't know what the other one is like, And I think this is why we do so much suicide awareness, is because people are trying and they're tired and they're hoping for something different, or they're hoping to just silence whatever it is that they're feeling. So it's an escape. Many people say it's selfish. Maybe many people say it's attention seeking. Another topic for another day. But when we are able to see and acknowledge someone's struggle, we're better positioned to help them if they are showing suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation. So normally it's like the person speaks about dying a lot, or you just kind of see them withdrawing. There's what we call parasuicide, so harmful behavior. So, you'll see people, sometimes they cut themselves, or they just do things that put them at risk. Those are some of the things that are showing you that this person is thinking about, my emotional difficulties, I can't manage them. Many people who cut themselves, they cut themselves because they have an emotional pain and they can't understand it and they can't get rid of it. So it's like, if I cut myself like this, I'll have a physical pain. At least now I can link it to something tangible.
Concentrate on these things.
Yes, exactly. So those are some of the telltale signs that someone is not doing well. And when we talk and we're okay with talking, and we're okay with talking about emotions, people will tell you. So this thing about, no, now you must be strong. The thing about myself I like in my life is there's no challenge that will overcome me. I'm strong. We don't want space for emotion conversations about emotions. Or we say people are weak. So coming back to what you were talking about before, about the stigma. So when we do allow people to talk, we do have those uncomfortable conversations, or we do see people struggling and not project, I think you should be like this. They will say things. They'll let you know that I'm really not doing okay. There's so many suicides that shouldn't have happened because a person was just isolated. And then there was no one to then say, wait, let's talk about this. If we think about the suicide hotlines now, it's a random stranger on the other line. And people call in, those hotlines are busy because people are like, I'm tired of life. I don't know how to cope. Things are not okay. My world is falling apart. And that's how they feel. And now you'll be like, yeah, but you have a job. What do you mean your world is falling apart? For them, it's falling apart. So when we don't expect people to show up a particular way, they'll tell us. And those are some of the ways that we can allow ourselves, like we can allow people to talk about their feelings. And then if they do need professional help, then those are the signs that, okay, fine, this one needs to be able to process this. They are at high risk for suicide. But in terms of suicide risk, we do a suicide risk assessment. And this is something that people should know, right? The person is talking about suicide. If you see that they do really harmful behavior, things that get them into a lot of trouble, destructive stuff, then they're going towards self-harm. And people get there and they go there before even things like suicide, So we'll do a risk assessment. We'll check in with them. How often do you think about dying? Do you have like a stash of pills somewhere? Well, look, I don't know. I mean, I've asked people those questions and they've answered me. They've told me, this is what I have. I have poison. I have, like, they tell you, if you ask, they will tell you. It's just we're not used to it as well. We're not socialized to it. And then that's when you can see if a person has poison somewhere and they're thinking about dying, they are high risk. And then you have to intervene. They're not in a place where they can make that decision for themselves.
So what are the words if like the attempt had failed? What are the words you say to comfort them, like not to make them feel like they can still do it again? What are the words that we as the people around them needs to say or need not to say to them, the do's and the don'ts?
Don't tell people they're selfish. Like, they already feel bad about themselves. Now you're telling them, like, look what you're doing to me. It's true. It's very painful if someone who you know has attempted suicide. It's very painful. It's one of the worst pains in the world. But if you then give that out in anger, right? Because remember, you're feeling sadness. And maybe, yes, there's some anger at them too, right? But if you give them that anger, they already are struggling with themselves. So they're going to take that anger and it's like, another reason why I should die, because I'm breaking the hearts of the people who I love, right? So the things like telling them that they're selfish, telling them that they're attention seeking, or saying things like, next time maybe you'll succeed. No, we don't do that. We need to have empathy and we need to be able to try to see where the person is. And you might not be able to, especially if you've never struggled like that. But try to see where the person is and allow them to communicate with you and tell them what's up. You give them affirmation, you give them support and say, look, I still care for you. I don't want this to happen to you. I don't want you to end your life. I don't want to lose you. But please come towards me. I'll try and walk with you as much as I can. Try and support you. And sometimes even when you're hearing what they're saying, you're like, but you hold it because you're not in the same place. It's like trying to talk neuroscience to a child. They're like A, B, C, D, and then you're talking about, I don't know, it's about being able to then see that this person, where they are now, their mental health is not in an optimal state. How do I speak to them with care, with empathy? How do you support them? How do you love them the way you love somebody who's kind of going through a lot, somebody who's having a physical illness? Somebody has an amputation, you're not going to be like, yeah, just get that prosthesis and run. You won't say that.
You have a lot of feet. Why, Manji?
You won't do that. So it's just like, let's just learn how to be a little bit more empathetic and support people. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, we won't end. I love this, but most importantly, a lot of people need to hear such conversations, and so that we are helped. But tell me, I don't know whether it was because in the olden days people were not aware what is happening, but it seems like now everybody seems to be having a mental illness. What are the causes really? What is happening?
Look, I think that previously there wasn't enough language about mental health, mental illness. Also, we used to say that mental illnesses are not Black people things.
Yes. Apparently, there's also white people like, I want to do that. It's not just Black people.
I think people have had challenges, but also we're in a much more diverse world, much more globalized world. So we are exposed to so much more. If you think about COVID, right? If we didn't have airplanes and the person who got COVID, where they got COVID from, they were not going to bring COVID to South Africa. So now we're saying, yeah, there's much more viruses going around and everything. What's going on? Is it people who are just acting up? No, it's because we move a lot and we share a lot. I mean, you speak about TikTok. Everything is on TikTok. TikTok, there's everything. Everything is on TikTok. Everything is on TikTok. Kids are not being raised by their families alone. You know how this is, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes TikTok to raise a child also. You don't know what's on there. You don't know what people are exposed to. So how this impacts on your mental health is, and then the onset, for example, of a mental illness is that the things that you do to build yourself up, self-awareness, how you recognize yourself as useful, constructive, you build relationships, how you make decisions. While that should be like an intimate type of process for yourself, a developmental, there's someone telling you about something that you're doing wrong. Even if you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. There's so much influence. So that does impact on how a person is able to develop that self-concept. And then naturally, then you're finding yourself much more vulnerable towards choices, situations that can impact negatively on your mental health. So remember when I was saying before that I've worked a lot with trauma, and I understand that some mental illnesses, the onset is something traumatic, something that destabilized you, and then you kind of continued like that. That is essentially one of the reasons why I think we're seeing much more mental illness in society. Plus, we went through a pandemic, and then we just kind of like went back. Like we're like, oh, okay, we can go outside, mask off, sanitizer out, and no one is speaking about how did this impact on you. How many people did you lose? What else did you lose? What did it mean for you to have to go back home? You know, what did it mean for you so you couldn't see somebody for 2 years? What does it mean that when this person passed, you couldn't go to their funeral? Like there's so much. COVID did so much. We were walking around, there's this thing that's killing people. We can't see it. We just, you know it when you know it, when it's in your body. When your temperature goes up, when you start to get that headache, that's when you know it was so invasive. So COVID on its own, that pandemic has really destabilized our society. We see it by people coming in, seeking out for mental health care, but everyone's just kind of like,
moving along.
But we move. But it is what it is. It's really not. We don't know what it is, you know. But yeah, so I also I don't kind of subscribe to that thing like, hey, yeah, people are talking about mental illness too much. Everyone is just saying, yes, there's different levels. You know, depression is not one. There's different types of depression, different types of anxiety. But let's at least hear what people are saying. Someone is saying I'm depressed. They're not just saying that for vibes.
Yeah.
Why? Why? You know? So we do need to open up to that and understand what is actually going around. Not necessarily even like the terminology and the language. When somebody is like, yeah, I struggle with this, what are they actually saying to you? Yeah.
How do we differentiate between a person that is calling for attention and seeking attention? Because some people tell you, no, this one just seek attention. No, hey, this is a call for attention. Let's
attend to it.
Yeah.
Even the person who's seeking attention needs attention.
There's a sickness on its own.
In the sense that, you know, we communicate. The difference between us as adults and the 2-year-old at the mall who's screaming and throwing themselves on the floor is language. So the reason why we call them the terrible twos is because that child at that developmental stage doesn't have enough language to express that, actually, I want this water. And when the parent says, no, you can't have the water, they're like, okay, why can't I have the water? Can I have the water later? They're like, give me the water. They don't have the language for it, right? So they throw the tantrum, and we see that, and it seems attention seeking. But when we look at the child, we can say, yeah, it's a tantrum. But when we understand underlying the tantrum is a instant gratification, which is normal for a 2-year-old, they're still developing, but also it's because they don't have that pause. They don't have the language to say, I'm actually really thirsty, please can I have this water now? I know I'm going to pee in the bed, I know, right? But I'm really thirsty. But you see that when we see adults with a mental health difficulty, and we call it attention seeking, from what I understand, let me not generalize, but from what I understand is that person is trying to say something nonetheless. There's a message they're trying to give you. Maybe they don't know how to give the message well. So we'll then see like, yeah, this is acting out, or there's something. We see this with our teenagers a lot when we find them using substances, reckless behavior and stuff, and we'll be like, yeah, it's that phase. It's the phase of what? So it's a phase of one. We know that there's a reason why the government says don't let children drink before the age of 18. Because the ability to be responsible is not there, right? They're going in a psychosocial stage where they're developing. They're trying to figure themselves out. They're trying to be part of a community, which is normal. They're trying to be part of a community. They're trying to develop themselves, figure out who they are, who am I in a social world? And sometimes these things come in as well. So you find them then engaging in things that are not healthy. And we're like, yeah, this person just has, I don't know, they just like trouble. They're trying to figure themselves out. What we should be trying to do as a society is creating spaces where teenagers, for example, are able to explore themselves in a safe way. They will stray from time to time, because that's why even the government doesn't trust them. I hope there's no teenagers who are going to watch this. But that's the reason why government doesn't give them cars, government doesn't give them alcohol, cigarettes. It doesn't, because they're like, if you're 15, you're going to botch this.
Not trusted. Can be.
No, that one's a different one. The age of consent is very low.
It's very low.
Yeah, yeah. That's a different problem, and that's part of the reasons why we do have a lot of problems. For example, with statutory rape and early pregnancies. Yes, yeah. But when somebody does seem attention seeking, it's because there is something that they're trying to say. We just need to figure it
out. As we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to say without me asking when it comes to mental health, psychology, everything?
I think the most important thing, I think the thing for me that's most important is, one, we really need to stop stigmatizing and discriminating against people who are living with a mental illness. We understand it's not something we know. We need to find out. Caveat: TikTok is not going to give you mental health advice unless it's a professional. I think one of our issues that we do have as well is that there are people who are trained professionals in psychology and mental health, and then there's times when there's misinformation. So also, as you go out to seek information about mental health and mental illness, there's also misinformation about mental health and mental illness. And just to be aware of that, try to find somebody who is trained, who is licensed, and you can find them on social media, but you just check, or else, also just build communities of safety as well. It's really good for your mental health.
Where do you find your practice?
Okay, so I'm based in Rainer Ridge, on Newland Street. So yeah, I'm based there. I'm sure maybe we can put the details in there. I do have a social media page that I was really trying to work on, kind of raising awareness about mental health, mental illness. It's called Ask the Psychologist. So it's on Instagram. So that's where I do try to put out information, proper information for mental health awareness. But otherwise, yes, I am based in Rainer Ridge.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amina, for coming and clarifying most of the things for us. And I hope we have learned and we will say the right things. We will be there for our family and loved ones the correct way. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. This was a great, great conversation. I hope you took something for yourself and for your family. From me and Bethany Media, we say bye. Till next time.